Please join me standing for the first hymn, 112, When I Am Frightened. The words will be projected on the front. What? Oh, it's in the teal hymnal, if you'd like the hymnal. Yes. When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me?
morning. That's a good hymn, isn't it? Got me thinking about things and wanting to feel kinder and more loving and supportive. And so I'm sure glad to see all of you here today. It really is a delightful thing. It's my favorite part of the week when I can look out at a room full of wonderful people like you. So some of you know I've been going through some dental issues, and I have a temporary bridge, and basically they put in a whistle. So it's very easy. So whistle while you work. I'm going to be whistling while I work, and so I hope you'll learn to deal with it for a while, and I'll try to keep those down. But thank you for being here. And how many? So this is the last Sunday I'm going to ask this question for a while. But how many of you know what the word mudita means? Mudita. I'll tell the rest of you in a second. The first Sunday I asked that question, one hand went up, and now a lot of hands are going up. This is a word I believe needs to come fully into the English language. It comes from the Buddhist tradition, and mudita is to take joy. It's the opposite of schadenfreude. So schadenfreude is taking joy when other people are having a hard time, but mudita is taking joy in other people's well-being and their pleasure. And so that's one of the keys to a happy life, if you really are caring about the happiness of other people. So I want you to do a little experiment. Sort of look around the room and find somebody on the far side of the room. Just sort of look at them. Don't even establish contact. We're sort of notice them. And then I want you to just sort of close your eyes. And it's a practice. Mudita is not an idea. It's a practice of wishing them well, hoping that they're having a good life, hoping that whatever problems they're facing, they're able to face them. We wish one another well-being, and when we do that, we create community. So take just a moment, did you do that? And wish well-being for somebody in this community, somebody you might not even know. And hopefully, during the fellowship hour, you'll have a chance to connect with that person. And that'll be a beautiful thing. Mudita. Mudita. Thank you for being here. You changed my life. You're wonderful people. I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you.
See, Lorna, you're not the only one that has to adjust the mic. The living tradition of Unitarian Universalism draws from many sources, including direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to forces that create and uphold life. May we remember that as we say our affirmation together. Love is our doctrine. Compassion is our way. Here we seek to create a joyful home for free religious exploration, build a community of caring fellowship, nurture the hopes and serve the needs of our world.
lies behind, leaving not a trace behind.
And now we're going to have a special treat as Reverend Rick and his wife Cordana are going to come up and light the chalice for us.
Yes, I asked to light the chalice today because a couple of weeks ago we had this wonderful, come on up, Gordana, please, stand here. We had a wonderful celebration of our 30th anniversary here as a ministry, and I just wanted to light a chalice this morning. The light of my life, Gordana, my wife's going to light the chalice for us this morning, as we thank you, the rest of the congregation, for 30 years of such wonderful time and love and everything. And we just wanted to have the opportunity to thank you all by lighting our chalice. And go ahead and light this one. We light this one. This is for our congregation because you're so full of love and you bring so much light into our lives. And even if there's not enough oil in the chalice to light, we'll move on to the next one. And it's not going to light. It's just... move on to that one. Symbolically, this is flaming. It's a hard chalice to light. And go on to this one. We light this chalice for our youth, and this is symbolic that even when we struggle to keep the light going, we do it. And please don't. It's not going to work. But we light these chalices, and we sing them into life.
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
Hello. It's not Molly, it's actually Sarah again. Welcome. Thank you to everybody that came on family night. We had a blast. You, Vincent and Hunter, did you have a good time? Fantastic. So could all of you young and at heart please come sit with me so we can read a fabulous story. I don't know if everybody watches basketball, but this is a book by Steph Curry. He's on the Golden State Warriors. He's amazing. Thank you kindly. Thank you. So it's called I Have a Superpower. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So it says, good evening, folks, and welcome back. The game is tied 92-92 with 4 seconds left on the clock. The home team has possession of the ball, but who will they give the ball to for the final shot? Let's watch. Someday that'll be me on the court. I can almost hear them cheering my name. Hughes, Hughes, Hughes. Meet Hughes. He loves science, his dogs, and the game of basketball. Though he's only 8 years old and might seem like your ordinary kid, he is anything but ordinary. I am? Yes, because you know what you have? You have a what? You know, that thing that makes you extraordinary? A superpower. Right, a superpower. Today is no ordinary day for Hughes. Thanks, right. Today is super, mega, huge day, because today is the day I share my superpower with the world. But I'm not going to just tell you, everyone, about my superpower. I'm going to show them my superpower. There are only a few people in the whole world who know about Hugh's superpower. My coach, my parents, and of course, me. Well, now tell them your secret, your other secret. It's my favorite part. Guess what? You have a superpower, too, and I can teach you how to use it. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's no way this short, scrawny kid has a superpower, and there's no way I have a superpower. That's exactly what I thought. But one day, my mom told me all about my superpower. At first, I didn't believe her. Then my coach told me all about it, too. He said that my superpower will help me in all parts of my life, even when I grow up. He even taught me how to use it on the basketball court. And that's how we got here. The moment we've been waiting for, folks. We're about to witness the super, mega, huge reveal. You got this. Now get out there and show them all your superpower. I guess I'm not. I guess I'm worried that I still won't be good enough to keep up with them. Okay, here we go. Can I get on a team? I'd rather have your dogs on our team. Yeah, at least your dogs can run fast and jump high. That's enough. We're a player short anyway. Line up, Hughes. You're in. Just try to get open, and I'll pass you the ball. I've seen you practicing a lot. You got a decent shot, kid. Thanks. I'll try to keep up. And so began the moment that Hughes had dreaded, the picking of teams. Aliyah and Caden are the two tallest kids in school. They could practically dunk since they were in second grade. I'll take Aliyah, and I'll take Caden. I wish I was as tall as a giraffe, and the kids would call me Stretch. Desmond and Owen are the two fastest kids on the court. I wish I could run as fast as lightning. People would call me the Jolt. Mila and James have sneakers that are guaranteed to make you jump higher. Mila, James, and I wish I could jump way up in the sky, and people would call me Spring Man. But Hughes didn't have any of those superpowers, and the one he has isn't something he was born with or learned in a day. No, it was quite the opposite. For months, he practiced every day before and after school. He dribbled his basketball wherever he went. He shot free throws every weekend in his driveway, and he watched all his favorite players on television to learn how they played. That's right. So even though I might not be able to jump the highest or run the fastest or be the tallest kid on the court, my heart is my superpower. With heart, Hughes knows he can overcome any obstacle that gets in his way because he is prepared and determined, and his heart allows Hughes to never give up on himself. And remember how I said I could teach you how to use your superpower? Well, heart isn't about winning or losing. It's about striving to be the best you can while still having fun. If you can remember that, then you can unlock your superpower. Hughes, 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 Hughes. Woohoo. And remember, folks, having heart isn't just for sports. If you have heart with whatever you're passionate about, you're destined for success. So until next time, say it with us. My heart is my superpower. Thank you. Wow, what a great game and such an inspirational story. When I was a kid, lots of people told me I was too small and too short to play basketball, but I never let that stop me from playing. And now I have a game for you. Go back throughout the book, paying close attention to the illustrations, and see if you can find all the items on my favorite things. Good luck. Yeah, I tried that. I could not find them. So, yeah. Well, thank you. So we're going to have fun today. We're going to do our own superhero stuff. So are we ready? Are we ready? AZ, you look prepared. Let's do this. So could everybody get together and do the love arch, please? Thank you.
Wherever you walk, walk in love. Wherever you walk, walk in peace. Wherever you walk, walk in beauty all around you. Our hearts go with you. Wherever you walk, walk in love. Wherever you walk, walk in peace. Wherever you walk, walk in beauty all around you. Our hearts go with you.
Join me in a period of quiet reflection. Just take a deep breath and be in this moment of time, fully present, heart and mind. And we reflect on our religious tradition. We remember our Universalist forebears. Our Universalist forebears were those who believed that God's compassion was too great for hell. Our Universalist forebears spread a message that God loves everybody, that no one goes to hell. This message was heretical, and yet it spread. A message of hope and love to subvert the fear that lays in people's hearts. This was an act of compassion to remind everybody that no one lies outside the circle of our love. and our tradition has guided us to be compassionate people, to care for the marginalized, to care for those who are despised and persecuted. Our compassion stretches everywhere. As the Buddhists remind us, our compassion is boundless. Our compassion for one another is boundless. May it be so. May we be in touch with that compassionate part of ourselves as we look at the world and help build a better world where there is more love and there is more compassion and no one lies outside the circle. Compassion is our way, our tradition. And gratitude. Let us have gratitude for our forebears, those who were not afraid to stand up and challenge authority, who realized that the stakes were high and they wanted to win freedom for all of us. For those who believed in truth more than safety, who felt more love than fear, whose hearts yearned and led them to dream and dare and create new vistas, new opportunities for all of us. These are our Unitarian forebears. And for our Unitarian and Universalist forebears, we have profound gratitude. Profound gratitude. May we live gratefully each moment of our lives, mindful of all that comes to us through the efforts and through the sources of life beyond our understanding. Compassion and gratitude. Compassion and gratitude is our path. Amen. Gene Logan from our Lifelines is going to come up and fill us in on what's happening.
We did have some wonderful messages written in here. On yesterday, Mary Solstrom passed in the afternoon. We wanted to say thanks to her family and Sam and Angela and Lisa for really hanging in there and being close to her during her final hours, days. Now this is from Leslie and Bob Zegar. Keep our friend Nathan in your thoughts as he is interviewing for a job far away. We can do that. Carrie Lynn Patterson, oh, I love your heart. She says, with great sadness, a homeless person died this week outside. My heart goes to them all. And Anna Talley, she has a fun one. Jack and I had a great day yesterday, cross-country skiing with Ben, Lily, and Reed Cavaletto, and Denise and John Hughes. This is exciting. Steve Rosen announced that Bonnie Heitch and he are engaged, and they're going to have a wedding in Massachusetts in May. Congratulations. Yeah. Congratulations. That's terrific. This one is from Fauna, and she says, hi, I'm a new attender of the church. I have my massage licensing exam on Tuesday. I'm asking for your prayers. Thank you. Oh, there's one more candle for all the cares and concerns, all the joys that we carry in our hearts every day.
The Lifelines Lay Ministry is a ministry that works with Reverend Rick in helping people who are going through a difficult time. I know that he has been looking for new people. Are you still looking for new people?
We're starting next Sunday.
He's still looking for new people, so if this is a ministry that you feel will be a passion of yours, if you have a kind, listening heart, please contact him, and there's going to be a training next Sunday. Thank you.
Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I hear your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears.
When I'm talking to people outside of this congregation, and they ask me to explain Unitarian Universalism, what do we believe in? How can you explain this? I turn to our 7 principles. So I ask you to get out the great hymnal, open it up to the first or second page, and we're going to go through them. Oh, it's on the order of service, which would be even easier. That's why it's there. Excellent. Simpler, easier, efficient. All righty. First principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. That means every person, regardless of race, sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic status, age, or if they know where Mount Holyoke is located. She does. Second principle, justice, equity, compassion, and human relations. Be kind. Listen to each other. Slow down and engage. Third principle, acceptance of one another and encouragement for spiritual growth in our congregation. I'll be excited for things you find out, and you be excited for things I find out. Appreciate the journey we are on. And remember, we are here for more than just the coffee. Fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. To me, that is the purpose of a spiritual home. Otherwise, I can find renewal at the coast. This is also the core of what Unitarianism is all about. This is what Francis David was looking for in what is now Romania over 450 years ago. And this is why he went from Catholic priest to Lutheran minister or priest to Calvinism to this, what is termed now Unitarianism. I am really impressed he could make all those changes and keep in the same church building. How did he do that? Fifth principle, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregation and in society at large. Yeah. Without this, there's no fourth principle. And without the fourth principle, there's no purpose for the fifth principle. It is what gives us congregational polity. That is, we as a congregation rule ourselves. It is why we are an independent entity. Otherwise, let's just go back to being congregational, at least in this country. Sixth principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Well, yeah. Don't know why you wouldn't want that. Even the Borg want this. They just have a different definition of what peace, liberty, and justice mean. Seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. kind of goes back to number 1, doesn't it? Makes a nice circle. We are connected to everything alive and not alive, and therefore everything has worth and dignity, which makes us connected to all. According to what is on the UUA website at the moment, Unitarian Universalist congregations affirm and promote these 7 principles, which we hold as strong values and moral guides. We live out these principles within a living tradition of wisdom, spirituality, drawn from sources as diverse as science, poetry, scripture, and personal experience. Not a bad way of looking at the world and engaging with it.
Thank you, Sarah, for reminding us of our principles. And so I'm going to whistle through this sermon. Hang in there. It was the revival week in the Southern Baptist Church in Columbus, Georgia, where my family and I were members. At my mother's insistence, I went to church every Sunday, and I got less than nothing out of it. I never felt like I belonged there. In fact, I didn't want to belong. I wanted to go out and play in the woods, not listen to a deadly boring sermon that never failed to put me to sleep. And then to have to sit through a Sunday school class taught by some clueless adult volunteer. Church wasn't a total loss because I enjoyed reading about Jesus, but I didn't like adults telling me about him because of the way they spoke about Jesus as a personal Lord and Savior, and that didn't make any sense to me. I liked reading about Jesus as a human being. Well, it all came to a head during that last night of that annual revival when I was 12 years old. Everyone was expected to attend every weeknight service. Imagine that, a week where you go to church on Sunday, and then you get to go to church every night of the week. And I hated it. It just was a hard week for me. And on the very last night of this revival, the choir sang countless verses of Just As I Am, over and over again to wear down our resistance. It's known as choir torture. They just keep going until you are going to finally come up. Meanwhile, the evangelist pleaded. There was an evangelist. They had an evangelist come in for this to lead the revival. And the evangelist, he pleaded and harangued and pulled out all the stops, urging people to come forward and rededicate themselves to Jesus Christ before it was too late. And the people responded. Everyone came forward to the altar. Everybody except for 5 folks in one pew. That was my mother and my 2 sisters and I. Personally, I was going to stay glued to the pew, and I guess they had similar resolve, even my mother, although we never really talked about this. This whole revival thing, for me, it felt manipulative. It struck me that most folks were yielding to peer pressure and not to spiritual impulse, and I wasn't going to capitulate. Instinctively, I knew that any religious conversion had to come from within, and that moving with the herd was not going to work for me. I've never been a group think kind of person. Nor, I suspect, are you. Over my nearly 4 decades in the ministry, Unitarian Universalist ministry, both here and in Southern California, I've heard countless stories from members who, when you were kids, you questioned the pastor or the priest about something that you were being taught, and you just got shut down for thinking for yourself. You often used to hear the phrase, maybe you still do, I don't hear it anymore, but the phrase was, you may be a Unitarian Universalist and not know it. Those of us who refuse to be manipulated or coerced, or deceived, are exactly the kind of people who originally founded our dual traditions, Universalist and Unitarian. And our unusual religious movement has historically been a refuge for free thinkers and those who dared to challenge the scientific, the religious, the political establishments. The forward progress of humankind relies upon those who think independently and will challenge prevailing beliefs when these seem to be in error. Most importantly, though, being true to yourself and being true to your own conscience and your own experiences and thoughts, that is the door to a genuine and a fulfilling life. And no one more clearly spelled this out for us than how important this is for our spiritual well-being than the medieval mystic Hildegard of Bingen. She was also the first published woman composer. And Hildegard of Bingen, talking about our spiritual lives, she said, "We cannot live in a world that is not our own." We cannot live in a world that is not our own, because a world that is interpreted by us, by others, is not a home. A world, part of the terror is to take back our own listening, to use your own voice, to see your own light. We cannot live in a world that is not our own, in a world that is interpreted for us by others. An interpreted world is not a home. And part of the terror is to take back the listening, to use our own voice, to see our own light. This profound observation points to the two primary and often competing sources of religion in throughout history, as noted by the 20th century Unitarian theologian and minister A. Powell Davies. And one source of religion is fear. Fear. This is the religion that represents an interpreted world that has a hierarchy. It's a hierarchical religion. It's overseen by priests and other official keepers of doctrinal uniformity. We're talking about a religion that provides a belief system that purports to offer protection from harmful forces and powers at large in the universe. Such a fear-based religions, they empower those at the top who then endeavor to keep control by various means, including sometimes the use of fear. Even as such religion might provide comfort and support, this comes at great expense, the great expense of your personal freedom, your own spiritual agency. You are not free in a fear-based religion. As A. Powell Davies bluntly puts it, people enslaved their minds to superstition because they were afraid of the world about them. And I would add that people also enslaved themselves to the authorities because they were afraid of the consequences of countering them. But the human spirit yearns for direct experience of freedom and wisdom and love and hope and joy. And this is the other source of religion, the infinite yearnings of the human heart and spirit. Yearning, wanting to know more, wanting to have more freedom, more love, more joy. And to give shape and voice to such a yearning, you have faith, yearning faith. You have heretics like the Buddha. The Buddha was a heretic. He rebelled against the exploitive practices of the Brahmin priests. And Jesus, he also rebelled against the exploitive practices of the priests in his tradition. And people like this come along and put us in touch with our deepest spiritual yearnings. And religions were founded in their names. Yet then, consider what happened in the history of the Christian tradition. In the early centuries, the followers of Jesus were followers of the spirit of love. Indeed, the identifying feature of the early Christian community was their extraordinary love for one another. People, outsiders, used to marvel about the Christians. See how they love one another. See how they love one another. But then, as the Christian movement grew, the Roman Empire astutely chose to ally itself with the church they once persecuted, but now it was getting so big, they say, we're gonna get on board with this. And the Romans, in their systematic and controlling ways, they determined that this religion would have set doctrines and creeds. Now you would recognize Christians not according to how they loved, but according to how they believed. And if you believed the wrong thing, you were destined for eternal damnation. Furthermore, if you held or spread what the authorities deemed were wrong beliefs, you would be punished. And thus it was that Christianity largely, though not completely, morphed from a religion of yearning and love and became more of a religion driven by fear of eternal damnation. And so there is this perennial tension within religions between these two sources, fear and yearning. That's why the great medieval mystic Meister Eckhart, he was on trial for heresy when he died. Mystics in both the Christian and the Islamic traditions have often been declared heretics because their ecstatic pronouncements subvert the creeds and the doctrines enforced by the religious establishment. But it's not only the mystics, it's also the scientists. Remember Galileo? Heretic Galileo? It's also the philosophers, the liberal theologians, the artists, the free thinkers who have challenged fear-based religion. These are our spiritual ancestors on both the Unitarian and the Universalist sides. Ours is a history of those whose yearnings for truth, for freedom, for love, took them beyond the gravitational pull of fear to loftier realms of thought and feeling and commitment. Things like dreams of the salvation of all souls, dream about the inherent goodness, not the evil side, but the goodness of human nature, our individual spiritual agency, our ability to do good and grow in mind and spirit. These were ideas that sound good to us now, but they were heretical thoughts in their own time. This is our tradition. This is our spiritual tradition, our free faith heritage. And then there is the institutional organization that has evolved over time to support our common endeavors and efforts. And as often happens with organizations, there has been a change within our own, and it's not for the better if you value democracy. Author and environmentalist activist David Corton notes that there is a recurring tendency for organizations, for corporations and institutions over time to discourage participatory democracy, to centralize power and control. And such is the case now in our own association. Currently, the way we govern ourselves is known as congregational polity. It dates back to the 17th century when congregations forming in New England were effectively declaring their independence from the Church of England. They're saying, you're not going to tell us how to think and believe and feel anymore. We're doing this ourselves because we trust our own lights. We trust ourselves more. Huge shift. Congregational polity means, among other things, that power is vested in democratically governed congregations. And the leaders of our larger association serve the needs of our congregations, not the other way around. It's in our associational bylaws. The purpose of the existence of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to serve the congregations. Because of our historic practice of congregational polity, we have enshrined democracy as the gold standard for governance, both within our associations and without. You read that it was our fifth principle, and there's a profound spiritual reason for this. As A. Powell Davies noted, in spiritual terms, democracy is the social and political expression of the religious principle that all people are kin and humankind is a family. Democracy is good, common good, unrestricted by nation and race or creed. And so Unitarian Universalists have always, up until recently, we have always aspired to have a more perfect democratic union. And in 2009, 14 years ago, a special report came from our association, the Unitarian Universalist Association's Commission on Appraisal. They studied us and they studied our practices, and they observed that the Unitarian Universalist Association could really improve the way it practiced democracy. And they offered many concrete and practical ways for us to reinvigorate our movement and engage more members in the larger life of our association. And I thought it was a great report. Many great recommendations were made, and I was heartened by this report. Alas, none of the recommendations was adopted by UUA leaders because they have other ideas in mind, apparently. In fact, the shocking and irrefutable truth is that the leaders of our movement are more enthralled to an illiberal, intolerant political ideology that divides and demeans. It's an ideology which is a perfect example of the idolatries of mind and spirit that our own sources warn us against. It is an ideology that our board follows and other leaders, and they have moved us in the exact opposite direction and have actively dismantled our democratic systems. During the recent election season, I was getting emails from the Unitarian Universalist Association talking about how we needed to get out the vote. We needed to get out the vote. We needed to strengthen our nation's democracy. We needed to make sure that people voted so that the will of the people was reflected. And I thought, wow, that's good. But it's stunning hypocrisy because of what the UUA is doing right now. If a UN election observer judged how the UUA practices democracy, we would be rated at best as a floundering democracy edging towards autocracy, whose leaders produce manufactured consent, not democracy that reflects the will of the people. I'll back these charges up. Consider the abundant evidence. One of the key ways that autocrats function is to control the flow of information. Our associational magazine, the UU World, used to have a letters to the editor section. I loved reading the letters to the editor because people could discuss and debate and have different ideas, and we could all kind of think together, but whoop, they pulled out. No more letters to the editor. No venue for alternative views to be aired. Then there's the UUA board. For a decade, the UU board, they had this thing so that if they could put people in uncontested elections, and so for nearly a decade, people who were on the board of the UUA, they came on board not through an election, but because basically somebody already on the board liked who they were and liked the way they thought and wanted them on the board. we don't need no representative democracy anymore, it seemed like. And so more and more people were selected to serve on the board who had a certain perspective. And then we had contested elections. Some Unitarian Universalists were upset by this, and they decided to challenge this. Brave Unitarian Universalists like Jay Kiskell and Reverend Beverly Cece and Rebecca Mattis, they stepped up and they ran in contested elections these past 2 years to get on the board of the UUA. And the UUA put their thumb on the scales, as you can read in Rebecca Mattis's disturbing account of running for a trustee position. She wasn't even allowed to put up a display in the General Assembly to announce her candidacy. They did everything they could to keep her from winning, and of course she didn't win. It's called manufactured consent. When an organization is run in apparently democratic fashion, but you get a pre-ordained outcome, and that's the way this has been working. You know for certain that a religion is morphing into a religion of fear and control when the leaders punish those who challenge their views. As my great hero, Roger Williams, the earliest champion of religious liberty in America, noted, that cannot be a true religion which needs carnal weapons to uphold it, which needs force to uphold it. Yet the psychological weapons of shame and fear and humiliation are being used by the Unitarian Universalist Association, as I discovered just a couple of weeks ago. I was on a Zoom meeting with some colleagues, some ministerial colleagues, including a transgender Unitarian Universalist minister from Connecticut, the Reverend Terry Cummings, a lovely person, and a loving minister. I really like Terry. And while we were on the Zoom meeting, I saw an email arriving from the Unitarian Universalist Association saying that Terry is being removed from ministerial fellowship. She's been accused by the staff, UUA staff, of having created a hostile work environment. Her own congregation looked into it, and they said these charges are groundless, and they refuted them. Nevertheless, the association, the Ministerial Fellowship Committee, looked into it, and they removed her from fellowship. Publicly humiliating process. Just a few months before that, my retired colleague, the Reverend Kate Rohde, who has loyally served our movement for over 4 decades, often as the first woman minister in UU congregations in the South and the Midwest. She was also removed from ministerial fellowship and stripped of a financial stipend at a time in life when she's struggling financially. And hers was a Kafkaesque process in which charges by unnamed individuals over unspecified violations resulted in this harsh punishment. A little bit before this, my colleague, the Reverend Richard Trudeau, he was censured by the Ministers Association. He put a post on the Facebook page and it said, I am concerned about the UUA approaches to anti-racism. I would like to meet with all those, black and white, who would like to discuss alternatives. That's what he posted. He got censured for posting that. Many of you know about my friend and brave colleague, the Reverend Todd Eckloff, who was viciously attacked and removed from ministerial fellowship for his book that he wrote, challenging the way our leadership is going. The book is called The Gadfly Papers. It's a book which thousands of Unitarian Universalists have read. Go online and look and you'll see. It's been favorably reviewed by many, many Unitarian Universalists, including members here. After a careful study of this very book, back in 2019, I think it was, members here, about 40 members, studied this book and found that the charges leveled against it were unsubstantiated, unfounded. Indeed, in 2019, Members of this congregation convened a congregational meeting, and you voted to reprimand the UUA leadership for their intolerant and illiberal behavior. You went to all the trouble to gather as a congregation, discuss this matter, and vote upon it, and you wrote a letter and you sent it to the UUA. They never said anything, never any response to the letter. Meanwhile, Reverend Eckloff continues to support his congregation, continues to enjoy the support of his congregation in Spokane. He's probably preaching right this moment. So they haven't gotten rid of him yet, nor will they. In terms of irony, think about this. Isn't it off the charts that the leadership of a liberal religious movement, founded and sustained by free-thinking members, is now kicking people out for free thinking, for being heretics? This is being written about in other places. I just read UU philosopher David Cycleback's article in the Journal of Free Black Thought on Substack. It's entitled How to Destroy a Liberal Church. It's about what's happening to us. Over the past 2 years, I've been in Zoom meetings with many lay UUs from all over the country, all around the country, who are deeply concerned about our free faith tradition and who have good reason to resist the UUA's authoritarian approach to anti-racism and other matters. The UUA's approach to anti-racism is that the problem is, no, we all want to be anti-racism. The problem is that the approach that the association wants us to have is incongruent with our life-affirming free faith, not to mention that social scientific studies show that this heavy-handed approach is actually counterproductive, serving only to diminish trust and goodwill. Yet the leadership of our association is ideologically committed to this one illiberal and intolerant approach. It's widely reviled by a wide majority of people of all races in our country, as polls show. And even as it purports to promote inclusion, it's actually a culturally elitist ideology, off-putting to most. Simply put, power has been abused. I'm not saying that the people in the UUA are bad or evil people. I care about them, but I don't think they have been going down a good path. I think they've been abusing their power, perhaps not aware of it, perhaps thinking they're doing good in our world, but they have been abusing their power. And now, in my opinion, congregations are being asked to give the leadership of our association official power for what they've been doing anyway, exercising more central control. This is the reason that I'm delivering this sermon today. It's because in June of this year, our General Assembly delegates from all congregations and fellowships too, lay-led fellowships, will all be asked to vote upon the most radical theological change in our association's history. It's complicated, but justifying such changes, the Reverend Marcus Folio, who works on behalf of the UUA, noted in a recent sermon, and their pronoun is they, so I'll refer to Marcus as they. He noted in a recent sermon, congregational polity is misrepresented. He said, they say congregational polity is misrepresented. They say this in a sermon. They don't say how it's misrepresented. They say it's inadequate. Again, they don't say exactly how. And then they say it's not the polity of modern-day Unitarian Universalism at all. Well, if it's not, then what is? And that's not making any sense to me at all. How did this come to be? It's almost like waking up in America and saying, democracy is not really the system. Well, that's probably true. But to say that, to say that we're abandoning it, which is the thrust that I get from this. So the UUA is presenting a new vision, a new version of our association's bylaws for us to vote upon. And the heart of these bylaws is on the back of your order of service that today. It says that we, the members of this congregation, but it's all Unitarian Universalists. These are our purposes and our principles, our 7 purposes and principles. It also lists the 6 sources of our faith. This is a stunning collective achievement, the purposes and principles. It reflects the work of generations of Unitarians and Universalists. They had to skillfully weave together the sentiments. You had your theists and you had your humanists, and they had to come up with a statement that would satisfy them both and feel like they included them both. So it's a remarkable document. My colleague, the Reverend Richard Trudeau, has a wonderful history of the purposes and principles. If you care to read it, I think it's online. But if the proposed changes that the Unitarian Universalist Association Commission on Institutional Change is proposing are adopted, and it's going to be a 2-year process, our purposes and principles will be gone and replaced by something I can't understand. I couldn't explain it to a newcomer coming into our building. I don't think you could either. You'll have a chance to look at what's being proposed, but it's not very compelling to me. I think our purposes and principles are doing quite well. But one of the things that really worries me the most about this possible change is that it will, and you have to read the language very carefully. It looks almost like the same thing sometimes, but certain words placed in certain ways can change, can just like a hinge, can change and open a different door that leads a different direction. And the door that I'm afraid is being opened is that we will be voting away our power and control. Our power and control. And it will be replaced, I think, by an enforcement of ideological conformity among congregations. And power will effectively be transferred away from us to the UUA. Why do I have this fear? Because the UUA leadership has shown by its systematic dismantling of our democratic practices and processes, they don't trust in the goodness and the wisdom of the members of the congregations, and feel that they must step in and make sure that we follow them, that we obey their vision, march to their tune. As a Unitarian Universalist minister in official fellowship, I am in official fellowship unless this sermon gets me kicked out. And I am actively serving a congregation, so I get a vote on this. And how do you think I'm going to vote? I'm going to vote no on radical, religiously regressive. Here's the thing, it's not progressive at all, it's regressive changes. No matter how many times they attempt to manipulate or coerce me with revival-like revolutionary fervor, I will remain glued to their pew. The UUA pulls out all the stops when they want to see changes, and they bring things into congregations, and they make presentations, and they don't allow for dissenting views to even be aired. It's not a good process. I've seen that happen. So I'm going to remain glued to my pew. I'm not going to get up and walk down this altar and meekly offer my spiritual devotion nor our congregation's self-governance to a false God who has proven to be lacking in compassion and kindness. I'm going to let Martin Luther King Jr. have a final word here, especially since our Unitarian Universalist Martin Luther King Jr. aligned organization, it's called UUAC, Unitarian Universalist Multiracial Unity Action Council, good group of people, they're banned from putting a display up booth at our General Assembly because they offer an alternative path, a better path to beloved community. So Martin Luther King says, I came to the conclusion that there is an existential moment in your life when you must decide to speak for yourself. Nobody else can speak for you. And so I have. And now you've listened to me. I've done my best to speak honestly. I hope I haven't spoken with too much of a lack of compassion, but I have to speak forcefully when the stakes are high. They're high now. And now it's your turn. It's your turn. You must now independently study and reflect and discern and arrive at your own conclusions. Don't let the minister tell you how to think. I'll tell you what I think, but you have to decide how you think on your own as we decide how we will go forward as a congregation, as an association, in this existential moment in the life of our free faith liberal tradition. Let us keep the flame alive. Would you join me for a period of reflection? Take a deep breath and let the higher thoughts and feelings in our hearts enter in now. Our great universalist forebear, Jose Ballou, he wrote that if we agree and love, there is no disagreement that can do us any injury. But if we do not, no other agreement can do us any good. Let us endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bonds of peace. And so during times of trouble and conflict and strife, during these disagreements, let us remember to agree in love. Let us always remember to look compassionately at those with whom we disagree, even as we offer our true selves, that we might enter into a true relationship. Let us always remember as we walk the path of life to not be afraid, to be who you are, to not be afraid to speak your truths, to declare your love. Let us rise above fear and listen to the yearnings of our heart, for they will guide us home. Amen.
We support UUCS through our pledges, time, and connections with one another. We support the Salem community through donations to the Marion Polk Food Share, and on the 5th Sunday of each month, we offer money for the Lifespan Religious Education Fund. LRE is expanding at the moment, including starting OWL classes, an active expanding youth group, and adult activities including ballroom dancing, learning ASL, and an upcoming board game night, I'm told. Let's support their energy in creating community and connections. The other part of the Share the Plate recipient is that all recipients turn into family. Earlier in January, we were supporting the Family Promise, both with monetary donations as well as supporting them in being here in this building. And today I have a report that one of our recipients founding recipients, not Family Promise, but another organization, has passed away. Willie Richardson, founder of Oregon Black Pioneers. She has come and spoken to us a couple of times. Very wonderful, energetic speaker. She is why we support the Oregon Black Pioneers. She was known for her hats, which coincidentally are on exhibit at the Bush Barn Art Center. And in the paper it was noted it was kind of a nice, it was an unintentional memorial for her. So you might go down and look at that. And she was 74, and the public memorial information will be given later. So I'd like to light a candle for Willie.
If home is really where the heart is, then home must be a place we all can share. For even with our differences, our hearts are much the same. For where love is, we come together there. Wherever there is laughter ringing, someone smiling, someone dreaming, we can live together there. Love will be our home. Wherever there are children singing, where a tender heart is beating, we can live together there, 'cause love will be our home. With love, our hearts can be a family, and hope can bring this family face to face. And though we may be far apart, our hearts can be as one when love brings us together in one place. Wherever there is laughter ringing, someone smiling, someone dreaming, we can live together there. Love will be our home. Where there are words of kindness spoken, where a vow is never broken, we can live together there, 'cause love will be our home.
So I got a lot to confess, don't I? No. Next Sunday, we're going to talk about that whole idea of confession and religion and what purpose it might have or not. And so that's next Sunday. Hope you show up for that. But today, after the service, there's going to be a gathering in here. I'm going to be joined by the members of the Committee on the Ministry. I see Dina and Joel and Ruth and Rob. Did I see Joel here today? It's so good to see Joel here. So they're going to be joining us. And this is a difficult conversation we'll be having with our UUA stuff. And if you want to come on in and after the service and sit and have you can bring your coffee if you don't spill it, and we can have a good conversation about that. And there's other news of the community too, so please do join us for a conversation afterwards. Faith Rockenstein wanted me to remind you that information about the women's retreat will be on the website and newsletter next week. So if you're thinking about that, then it's going to be happening. There are lots of activities in the life of our community, and I don't want to wear you down by listing them all. So just go to the website and check out what's happening, and we do hope you'll get involved in one way or another. This is a good way to get involved by showing up on Sunday, so thanks. And I just wanted to say one thought about Mary Solstrom. Mary is such a wonderful person, and we're so sorry that she had passed, but we really had some good times. And so when we extinguish the chalice today, I'll be also thinking of Mary. So thank you.
So, Rick, before you do that, why don't you grab the social justice candle? Yes. So we can light that too. And he lights this candle as a symbolic reminder of the social justice and service we all do in our daily lives. If nothing else, just being kind to one another. As he extinguishes the other chalices, these words from Reverend William Channing, one of the founding ancestors of Unitarianism in the U.S. He stated in 1812 that the truth must be told, not to irritate, but to convince, not to inflame the bad passions, but to sway judgment, to assert your truths with calmness, with a love of peace, without ill will or revenge. May we all know our own truths.
Please rise in body or spirit and sing the last hymn, 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. It's in the teal hymnal. The words will be projected. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed by love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we were birthed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place. Good job.
Please join me as we say our closing words. May faith in the spirit of life, hope for the community of earth, and love for the sacred in one another be ours now and in all the days to come.